came back to the beach from the ocean, but went to the wrong tent. When my husband found me, he was shocked. Hello, Reddit. I need help and I need it fast. I have now turned into a cheater, and I'm afraid that my marriage is over and I might be left with nothing. I cheated on my husband during a vacation, and now he has broken all ties with me. If that was all he did, I'd probably not be writing this here. But my husband went very far and made sure he hit me where it hurts. My name is Francesca, and I've been married for 5 years now. My husband, Luke, is 32 years old. He is just 2 years older than me. Luke works at a small company he co-owns with his friend, but I'll not be saying much on that because I already shared our names and don't want to share too much. My story is embarrassing, and I'm deeply ashamed of myself, so I do not want my identity to be discovered at all. I don't know what your definition of gold digger is, but I have been labeled as a gold digger literally throughout my marriage. Yes, I cannot deny the fact that money was one of the factors that got me closer to Luke. He's a hardworking man, and he has worked hard for years to get to where he is. I was a struggling fashion designer and makeup artist when I met Luke. This might sound corny, but I have always blessed the day I met him. If not for Luke, I would never even know what a vacation actually is. That's just how broke and hopeless I was before I met him. I know that greed got in the way and made me cheat on him, but that's not how it all started. It was thanks to a friend of mine that I got to meet Luke. I was meant to do his cousin's makeup, but coincidentally, Luke was there, so that's how I met him. The moment I set my eyes on him, I just knew that he was the one I wanted to marry. Luke is not good looking or sexy if that's the idea my statement gave you. He is actually just basic looking. But the moment I saw him, I could tell that he was doing well for himself. I also heard his cousin speak about him, so that's how I knew that he was living comfortably. Of course that attracted me to him. Who would not want a man that could cater for them? I was tired of struggling to feed by doing makeup for people and barely receiving anything for it. I wanted more. I wanted to live the luxurious life I saw online, and I didn't think that was a crime. I still don't think it's a crime, to be honest. I wanted more for myself, and when I saw the easiest way to get to the place I wanted, I took it without a second thought. Unfortunately for me, though, Luke didn't give me the kind of attention I wanted at first. I felt like he wasn't flirty or he just didn't want to notice me, but I didn't want that to stop me because I was honestly desperate for his attention. I didn't want to let such an opportunity pass, so I made sure I did my best to grab his attention. Thankfully, I was able to get what I wanted, and we exchanged contacts that same day. I had a deadbeat boyfriend by then, but I didn't care about him. He barely provided for me and always told me to be patient. He never gave me as much as I wanted and was a struggling artist. I didn't want that for myself, and I knew I wanted more. So I decided to let go of him and go after someone that would treat me better. I broke up with him after my first date with Luke, and I never looked back. The first thing Luke asked me on our first date was if I had a business of my own and had had personal projects and goals. I was desperate to date him, so I made up a lot of things and tried to make it seem like I owned the beauty shop I worked at as a makeup artist. I also made up some projects that I wasn't working on, just so he would think I was some sort of independent entrepreneur. Yes, guys, I was that desperate to make him see me in a different light. I knew his kind would not want to marry a broke woman, so I had to make it seem like I wasn't broke. Thankfully, it kind of worked, and after 6 months of talking and meeting up once in a while, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I went into a huge debt just trying to live up to his standards in those 6 months. I was always out renting clothes or borrowing money from my friends so I could look independent. It's safe to say that I was trying to fake it till I made it. For me, the packaging was important because for him to treat me right, I had to show him that I was already doing right. Luke liked entrepreneurs and women that had something going on for themselves. He didn't want someone that would be dependent without the vision to build up something for herself. I was the exact opposite of everything he wanted, so I had to make it look like I was that kind of woman. We dated for 2 years before he popped the question. After 6 months of dating at first, I didn't have to keep on borrowing because Luke started to take me shopping and buy me gifts. At some point, I was able to pay off all the debt I got myself into in the first place just from the way he cared for me. There were many times I almost got caught, though, like the times he would ask to see the kind of projects I had going so he could help me with money to take it further. I always told him not to worry and that I had things under control. I would just show him sketches of things that were not. Eventually, like I said, he popped the question after we dated for 2 years. By then, I actually leveled up and put some of the money I got from him into my friend's beauty shop. It all seemed like a fairy tale for me, and it was like I got myself the life I wanted. Everything seemed like it had fallen into place, and I thought I was the best game master. I mean, it's not every day that someone gets to climb up the social ladder they want without actually being affiliated with it. But my marriage started crumbling almost immediately. It didn't happen all at once in a way that you would notice. It all started falling apart bit by bit, and I am only realizing it all now after I have messed up big time. After the marriage, I got relaxed. I felt like I already had everything I wanted, so there was no need to do too much or try to hide the fact that I got into the marriage for money. I didn't want to continue working, and that was a huge problem for Luke. He felt like he wasn't seeing the same hardworking woman I painted myself out to be, and for him, that was shocking. I don't want to say I tricked him into the marriage, but to be honest, that's the truth. After the marriage, we disagreed on a lot of things that we actually agreed on before. Whose fault was it? Well, it was mine. I decided not to keep to the promises I made, but trust me, it was not intentional at all. It just happened. I had pretended for so long that the real me crawled out before I even realized it. I think I've spoken enough on the things that were my fault. Let me let you know about the things that Luke did that just absolutely got on my nerves. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I'm sure I did. Luke is not attractive. He's not sexy, or your team has over 10 attractive guys. He's just basic, but his money was attractive to me. After getting married and seeing the same face over and over again, it started to get boring, and I started to get tired of it. I wanted the thrill of seeing someone that made me excited, but the husband I had at home wasn't giving me what I wanted. I'm not going to say the sex was bad, but I'll not say it was great either. My ex-boyfriend was better in bed compared to Luke. But before I married Luke, I told myself that it didn't matter that Luke wasn't as good as my ex-boyfriend. I even joked that broke boys tend to have more time for the bedroom. Now I have spoken about our sexual life to a friend of mine before, and she seemed to be confused when I said I preferred my ex-boyfriend in bed. I had to explain that Luke wasn't bad at all. He was decent and better than the average man in the bedroom, but I just kept comparing sex with him with that of my ex-boyfriend, and that was honestly something that got on my nerves. Even while we were dating, I fantasized about going back to my ex-boyfriend just for a while to experience intimacy with him over again, but the luxury life that I got with Luke made me change my tone every single time. For me, it was an error to cheat on Luke at that stage. I had just gotten out of being broke, so I didn't want to experience the same thing over again. But after 2 years of marriage with Luke, those sensible thoughts that kept me from doing the right thing literally fled away from me, and I started thinking of things I shouldn't have thought about. To be honest, I regret it all now, and I feel like the most foolish woman on earth. I mean, who wouldn't? After just 2 weeks of facing Luke's wrath, I want my position as his wife back, even though I know it can never be possible anymore. Of course, it hurts me deeply just thinking about how I let the life I always wanted slip through my fingers just because of my nonchalant behavior. When I broke the news to my parents that I would stop working the moment I got married to Luke, the first thing they asked me was if Luke was okay with it. I lied that he was okay with it, even though I had never discussed it with him before. I just couldn't tell my parents the truth at that point because I knew they would never accept the decision I had made. I remember my mom pulling me to the side and telling me not to go on with quitting my job, even though I told her Luke was okay with it. According to her, sitting at home and doing nothing would make the marriage boring for me, and it would also give me time to think about things that aren't even sensible. I know she meant it from another perspective, but now that I think about it, she was right. The fact that I was jobless gave me room to imagine stupid things and fantasize about things that are forbidden. I mean, why was a married woman thinking of sleeping with her ex-husband? Oh my. The more I write this, the more I realize that I messed up big time. People of Reddit, can you believe that in my case, it wasn't just about fantasizing? Oh no, it wasn't. If it was just about fantasizing about infidelity, then it would have been better. But for me, I gradually started making moves to chest on Luke. Now, Luke started to get on my nerves a lot, and I blame part of my cheating on him. I just don't understand why 90% of our marriage kept on asking me why I was lying around doing nothing. I mean, why is a rich man concerned that his wife is not providing for the home? I believed that he had the money to do it. He claimed that I barely worked or showed enthusiasm to any of the projects I always bragged about. Well, I always told him none of that is my fault. I mean, how was I supposed to keep up with the imaginary projects that I didn't have? I just couldn't keep up with the lies, so I gave up. Now, Luke didn't give me the level of luxury that I wanted, and it was just one of the reasons I got pissed off. He seemed to have a problem with me sitting around all day doing nothing. If you ask me, he should have been happy that I was sitting around in his house all day. I consider myself a beautiful woman, and I married him. What is wrong with seeing a beautiful woman in your house all day? That aside, I noticed that I wasn't ready to spend as much as I wanted. I didn't marry him to suffer if I married him to run from being broke. He was giving me a monthly allowance before, but at some point he cut it off and told me he couldn't keep up with the amount he gave before. Apart from that, the gifts he gave me were not as much as they were. Whenever I complained, he would tell me to try working so I could earn myself money to get more luxurious gifts. That just didn't make sense to me at all. I didn't marry him to work my hands off the same way I did before. If I wanted to keep up with that life, then I wouldn't have married him in the first place. I would have just continued working. Another thing was the issue of childbirth. Luke and I didn't really sit down to have the family planning conversation before getting married. We never had such conversations, but we did ask each other if we wanted children, and the answer was positive. But after 4 years of marriage, Luke asked me to stop using the birth control pills so we can start trying for a baby, but I refused. When he asked me why I refused, I just told him I wasn't ready. Help me here on Reddit and let me know if there was something wrong in that reply, because till date, I don't understand why my husband felt like I was being selfish with that answer. He asked me why I wasn't still ready after 4 years. My honest reply was that I wasn't ready to hear children with a man that wasn't treating me properly. I said it then, and I'll say it again. I didn't feel like Luke was treating me properly. He barely cared for me as much as I wanted him to. What is wrong with spending money on the woman you're married to? How is that even considered bad? Okay, he gave me money, but it wasn't ever enough. That day we had a very long argument and we said a lot of things to each other. Luke was very upset and he actually left the house that night. Before leaving, he told me he wasn't ready to stay married to a selfish woman that barely cared for him. He actually made me feel like I was selfish and that I was only thinking about myself. He even went as far as claiming that I wasn't the same person he had dated. For me, that was very insulting because I said no difference in my attitude before and after marriage. The only thing that had changed is that I stopped pretending and decided to stay true to myself. I find nothing wrong in wanting the baby girl treatment or wanting a man to pamper me for as long as possible. There is nothing wrong with that. After Luke left the house, I didn't bother calling him till the next day. I got worried and felt that if I didn't call him soon, he would probably cheat on me or find a girl ready to do everything I didn't want to do. I called him several times, but he didn't pick my calls, so I decided to call his brother. I was happy to learn from his brother that Luke was with him. When I was sure that he wasn't doing anything stupid, I called my best friend and spoke to her about everything. I needed someone to speak to about my ongoing marital struggles, but I couldn't speak to my mother because I knew she was definitely going to call me a fool. I knew she was never going to agree with me or send things from my point of view, so I decided to talk to my best friend. Thankfully, I was able to get better advice from her. She did call me names and tell me I was doing too much, but she advised me to speak to him and try to patch things up. I listened to her, and the moment Luke came back, I spoke to him and apologized. I told him I would be ready for children in our 5th year of marriage, which was just a year away by that time. We talked things out, and even though I didn't agree with a lot of things he said, I pretended to be okay with it, just for peace to reign. I was back to pretending and acting like I wasn't hoping for a better man, but I just had to do it. I even started working again, even though I hated working. I just wasn't ready to get divorced and get back to hustling, so I was ready to pretend. Work wasn't that bad since Luke supported me with some money, and then the money I had invested in my friend's beauty shop was coming in once in a while. So a few months ago, Luke and I started planning a vacation for our 5th year anniversary. We wanted to celebrate it well, and deep down, I know the main reason I was excited was because I had promised that we could start for a child after 5 years. For me, the vacation was a proper way to spend money, enjoy life, and live freely one last time before I get knocked up and get in the family way for real. While planning for the vacation, something crazy happened. Like I said earlier, I started working again. But the work wasn't really stressful because I had money and wasn't motivated to do much, so I had a lot of free time. I had an excuse to come home late even though I wasn't really working. I started spending late nights out and having fun at clubs. Before, I had never been much of a clubbing person. Well, I realized that the main reason for that is actually because I didn't have money before. I didn't have the money to go clubbing, and I couldn't afford to spend much on dresses. But when I started working again and had the perfect excuse to stay out late, I realized I actually like clubbing. The club had to be one of the biggest temptations for me. It was just too much temptation, and I could barely resist any of it. I kept seeing people that were either too attractive or too flirty. Guys were hitting on me, and I couldn't hide the fact that I lied about it. I actually loved it. I loved the freedom to do whatever I wanted without getting caught. But the fear of getting caught stopped me from taking things too far. That is until I met a guy called Leo. Leo is the perfect definition of a risky man. He's the kind that doesn't care about the consequences of his actions. I had my ring on in the club, but he didn't care. He asked me to follow him home after we partied together one night. I didn't drink because I was scared of Luke smelling it on me when I got home, so I was fully in my senses. I showed Leo my ring and thought that would stop him from hitting on me, but I was wrong. Leo didn't care that I was a married woman. That didn't faze him at all, and he let me know. Oh, people of Reddit, I want to let you know that I messed up big time, and it started from that night. When I asked Leo why he wasn't fazed by the fact that I was married, he said to me, "If you were happily married, you wouldn't be clubbing this late." Those words were supposed to question my character, but I was so stupid that I blushed at his words. I almost followed him home that night, but thankfully, I got a text from Luke asking me why I was not home yet and if he could come pick me up. That text was able to get all the lust out of my eyes. Leo and I exchanged contacts, and then I quickly ran out of that club before I would get caught. I knew Luke was smart, and that if he called me, he could get my live location, and I didn't want that. I knew that Luke had zero tolerance for cheating, and the moment I was caught, the marriage was definitely going to be over. That scared me a lot, so I made sure not to do something I would regret. Leo is a freaky guy, and the evidence of my words are in the texts, the sent to me. Oh, I wish this was an app where I could view once messages of the bad things he said in those texts. There were many times where I almost got caught because his texts always got me crazy. After the day we met at the club, we couldn't meet up again because Luke warned me not to stay out late again. I didn't want him to get suspicious, especially because our 5th-year anniversary was coming up and we were already planning a vacation. I had looked forward to that vacation for a long time, so I promised myself there was nothing that was going to make me miss it. Instead, I made plans with Leo so we could see each other again. I told him I wasn't going to be able to see him for a while and that I was also going on a vacation with my husband. Leo asked me where the vacation was going to be, and I told him everything. I was the one in charge of planning the vacation, so I had all the information he needed. At first I thought he was joining, and I didn't actually believe that he had plans to come see me at the vacation all of a sudden. But to my surprise, Leo texted me a few days later and said he'll see me there. I was excited and scared at the same time because I didn't know what to expect. It was honestly a thrilling experience for me because the thought of cheating on my husband, sitting our anniversary at a vacation we had planned for months, seemed like a dangerous yet sexy thing to do. I think it was just the devil at this point because I am deeply ashamed of myself. I can't even believe that I had all these thoughts and planned everything out. So fast forward to the vacation that has now ruined my marriage. Luke was optimistic, and so was I. He paid for everything, and we made a lot of arrangements. The hotel we booked was nice, and it was very comfortable. To be honest, I was completely restless even after we got into the hotel. I kept on texting Leo and checking my phone every once in a while. It was like my body was itching to just chest and get it over with. I just wanted to do it because it had been long overdue. I also felt like it was not a bad thing because I was going to try for children with Luke after the vacation or even during the vacation. I told myself that there was nothing wrong with having a bachelor's night before becoming a mother. The thought of motherhood scared me, so I wanted to have fun. I knew cheating when pregnant wasn't nice, so I wanted to get it over with. Plus, it was just so hard to resist. Leo was all over my mind 90% of the time. He kept texting over and over again and sending pictures that were inappropriate. I didn't complain, in fact, and I encouraged everything he did. It got to a point that I wasn't even present in the moment I shared with Luke. All the time I had my mind on Leo and hoped to see him. Luke noticed my attitude very fast and tried to have a conversation with me, but at that moment, what I wanted to do was just far more important than my marriage. I didn't want to listen to anything I had to say. In fact, he irritated me. Joe, that I have spent hours scrolling on Reddit and reading other people's stories, I can finally understand why I felt that way. It all finally makes sense to me. I've seen a lot of people share their experiences and say when you want to cheat, all the common sense just runs away from you, and you find yourself doing something you never saw yourself doing. You also get irritated by your partner's presence, and everything they do or say doesn't interest you. All you can think of is your affair partner and when next you guys can meet. All these were the same things that happened to me. Luke got annoyed every minute and I ignored him. I got to tell that my attitude got on his nerves, but he tried his best not to flare up. I actually feel bad now that I think about everything. He tried to be understanding of my feelings. I even lied and said I was on my period just so he couldn't touch me. I just made several excuses and now I feel like I am a bad person. Okay, so let's get to the part where you all start to hate me and judge me. Before the vacation, Leo and I already planned that we would meet at the beach because Luke and I planned to go to the beach together and spend the whole day there. I chose the beach as the place to meet Leo because I knew it would be crowded and Luke would not be able to keep an eye on me. It was also the perfect place to pretend to get lost and spend hours trying to get somewhere. I already had excuses I would use in my head, so it wasn't a problem for me at all. When the fat finally came, I was beyond excited to say the least. I couldn't believe that I had the opportunity to finally meet Leo after we texted for so long. Luke and I took pictures and played with the water for a while before I excused myself to go get something from our tent. The moment I got away from the water and where Luke was, I pretended to go to our tent first before I walked somewhere else. I had my phone with me, and Leo directed me to his tent. When I got there, I noticed it was a big tent, so I was very happy. I didn't want those small tents that had very little privacy. I also didn't want to get caught in the act, so I was happy. The moment I met Leo, I knew that I was in big trouble. The texts and everything we had been up to just came to my head, and I knew there was no escaping. He was very nice, and at first all we did was talk and laugh about how we had been playing hide and seek with each other. While I was with him, a part of me was very scared, and it kept telling me to stand up and leave, or else I might get caught. I didn't want to get caught, but I still didn't want to stand up and leave. Another part of me tried to remind me that I was a married woman, and it was wrong to leave my husband at the beach somewhere, wondering where I was while I was with another man. The common sense in me tried to stop me from doing something I would regret, but the other part just wanted to be free and forget about the consequences. It was almost like Leo knew what he was doing the whole time. He could sense that I was thinking a lot, so he kept on telling me how sexy I looked and how beautiful I was. I kept blushing like a fool, and even made the move to hug him. So even though I tried, nothing worked, and before I knew it, I was already kissing Leo. At first we were just hugging, but things escalated pretty quickly, and before I knew it, I was doing things I didn't want to do. I got so lost in the moment that I actually forgot we were at a public beach and I could get caught. I was so deep in the moment that I didn't care about my phone ringing. I remember hearing it ring, but I completely ignored it because I was too busy kissing Leo. From kissing, things escalated pretty quickly, and I could tell we were taking things far. I didn't really plan on doing it on the beach, but at that point, there was nothing we could do, and before I knew it, I was already cheating with my husband. My phone kept ringing, but I was too rooted in the moment to pick up the phone. I did crazy things and forgot that I was married. I felt on top of the world until I heard someone call my name. At first I thought it was Leo, so I ignored the voice and continued, but then the voice called again from behind me. I stopped what I was doing immediately and covered my mouth because I knew it was over for me. I had finally come to my senses and I recognized the voice as Luke's own. Guys, I still can't believe what happened that day. I couldn't believe my eyes. Leo was shocked too, and he kept on asking who it was and why I was so scared. I just couldn't believe that Luke had caught me in the act. I honestly thought I was going to get away with it and he wouldn't find out, so it was absolutely surprising. You left me standing there for this? You witch! I knew something was wrong somewhere. Those were the first words I heard from Luke. He spat on the floor and gave me the most demeaning look. Leo finally put the dots together and realized that Luke was my husband. I thought he would try to defend me or do something to help, but to my surprise, he asked us to get out of his tent. I was shocked, but Leo didn't care. He was trying to save himself from embarrassment because people were already trying to see what was going on. Luke was so angry that he made the move to punch Leo, but someone stopped him from doing it and told him I wasn't worth it. I didn't know what else to do or say to save me from the embarrassment, so I just said anything that came to mind. It was my way of escaping the trouble I had put myself through. I came to the wrong tent. It was a mistake. That's what I said to Luke. But instead, Luke laughed in my face and cursed me out. He looked so shocked and disappointed, and that made me embarrassed. Do you think I am a fool? You came to the wrong tent, so you claimed another man and cheated on me? How long have you been doing this? In fact, I do not want to know. Expect the divorce papers. Those were the exact words he said to me before he left the tent. Some people were trying to record, so I tried to hide my face on Leo's shoulder, but he pushed me out of the tent and said he didn't sign up to babysit me. He said he had been with many women before, and none of them had gotten him so embarrassed. I already got what I wanted. Even though it didn't last as long as I wanted, and I've pretty much wasted my time, I can find more girls here. Those were his parting words to me. I remember them like it happened yesterday. He said those things before he threw me out. I ran off the beach to avoid getting recorded before I checked my phone, and there were up to 10 missed calls from Luke. It finally made sense to me, and I realized he was the one that kept calling, and it was probably the ringing sounds that exposed me and made him find me. Just 3 days ago, and almost 3 weeks of getting caught cheating, Luke had filed for divorce and sent me the papers. He is using his money to oppress me, and he has gone as far as chasing me out of his house. I'm really scared, guys. He even cut off my allowance and told my parents. We do not have a child together, and I fear I might leave this marriage empty. Please help me because I really need help. Update. Hello, Reddit. This user is back with the much-needed update. It's been so long, and a lot of comments have been asking for an update. I'm sorry, but I had to log off because life really hit me where it hurts, and I've been struggling to make sense of all that's been happening. I did get divorced, and I was left with chicken change. Luke caught everything I benefited from him and sold off 90% of the shoes and bags he got for me. Yes, he actually put them on Amazon and sold them off. The divorce was absolutely brutal, and he proved that I am below his financial capabilities by hiring a lawyer that literally ruined me in court. I'm back to striving to survive, and my parents are so angry that they do not want to give me a listening ear. It's been so long since my parents are still giving me an attitude. The stereotype of divorce is insane, and every day I am being reminded of my past marriage. Even my best friend has an attitude. I'm really exhausted, and I just hope all these end one day, and I can get back to a better life if that's possible. It's like I went from grass to grace and then back to grass again, and this time, no rich men are in sight. I guess you all know why there has been no update now. My life is a mess, and I'm only trying to survive each day.